We've been friends forever, for 25 years.
Yes.
Before I had my kids, we were just buddies, like nothing like romance from friendship.
Okay, so let's talk about a story that honestly left a lot of fans shocked, confused, and deeply emotional. Because when news started circulating that Birdman had allegedly confirmed a lingering connection with Kimora Lee Simmons, the internet did what it always does. It exploded. But the part that truly broke hearts wasn't just the rumors, the timelines, or the whispers behind the scenes. It was the emotional reaction that people say came from none other than Toni Braxton. Now, before we dive into the messy layers, you have to understand why this situation hit so hard.
The two tied the knot and seemingly split just 48 hours later last year. The pair apparently agreed to call off the divorce in January.
We've been friends forever, for 25 years.
Yes.
Before I had my kids, we were just buddies, like nothing like romance from friendship.
And by the way, you all do a great job of kind of keeping it out.
Well, we didn't want people to know.
Why not?
Because of what happened. Yeah.
But if people know, then they don't make up those stories.
But if they don't know, it's nothing to talk about. You get to live your life a little, freer. I am the happiest I've been in a long time.
She happy. I ain't got money, because I'm going to make sure that.
I introduced Toni to her husband. Then he started speaking to me about my sister. I was like, my sister Mary, please go sit down somewhere. And so when Toni got a divorce, he was serious about her and, made his way in.
This isn't just about celebrity gossip. This is about love, loyalty, history, and a woman who has spent decades being strong for everyone else. Fans didn't just see headlines. They saw a story that felt deeply personal. Because when someone who has always carried herself with grace suddenly appears hurt, quiet, and emotional, people notice. And that's exactly what happened here. What nobody expected was that behind the calm smiles and composed interviews, there were whispers that Toni was devastated after hearing confirmation that a past connection Birdman allegedly had was never truly gone. And if that is even partially true, then this story becomes less about drama and more about heartbreak. Because imagine believing in a love story only to feel like a shadow from the past never really left the picture. And trust me, the deeper you look into this timeline, the more complicated it becomes.
Yeah, we've been like besties for a long time.
People always say that. But
No, this is real. Like no cross the line.
Besties, like you always kept in touch and you always talked?
We would keep in touch. He would come see me when I had my plays. When I had my baby shower, he would come. Like we were really friends. He's a gentleman. He's such a gentleman.
Is he?
What?
I could see that.
Opening doors, and he's just a gentleman. People don't know 2016 November when I was on tour October, I was really sick. I don't mean kind of sick. I mean like really,
from
really
lupus?
sick. Yeah, I had a really bad flare, and I was on tour. And every day I was on tour, he was there with me. And on my off days, he would go and take care of his business, but he would follow me on the bus and just make sure I was okay. And I don't know if you've ever been really, really sick in your life and you feel kind of hopeless and you got somebody who's a friend that's there. That's kind of, it just made me see him differently.
To really understand why the situation is so emotional, we have to go back and look at Toni's journey, not just as a celebrity, but as a woman who has lived through public struggles, private battles, and emotional sacrifices that most people could never imagine. For decades, Toni has been known as a legend, a voice that gave the world timeless music, a woman who carried her family on her shoulders financially, emotionally, and professionally. She wasn't just a singer, she was a provider, a protector, and the strong one in every room. And while fans admired her success, they also witnessed her health battles, financial setbacks, and personal heartbreaks. That kind of life shapes a person. It makes them crave stability. It makes them want peace more than anything else.
Miss Kimora Lee Simmons.
Russell's own wife, right?
Back to the family, but back to the family.
The baby was beating that. Go ahead, finish the story. Finish the story.
Say word.
Finish the story.
So when her relationship with Birdman became public, many people were actually rooting for them. It wasn't some flashy young romance. It felt mature. It felt grounded. Two people who had known each other for years finally embracing love later in life. And honestly, that narrative touched fans deeply. deeply because it showed that even after years of struggle, happiness could still find you. They had history, not the kind that starts overnight, but the kind that builds slowly over time. Interviews showed warmth between them. Toni would smile softly when talking about him. He, on the other hand, always spoke about her with admiration. And for once, it seemed like she wasn't the one carrying everything alone. But here's where context becomes important. Before Toni officially became part of his romantic life, Birdman had long-standing connections and rumored ties to different women in the industry. And one name that always quietly lingered in conversations was Kimora. Their alleged past wasn't new gossip. Internet detectives had been connecting dots for years, pointing out appearances, interactions, and overlapping timelines that raised eyebrows. Now, none of that was ever fully confirmed back then. It lived in that gray area where rumors breathe but never fully become facts. Still, the whispers never completely disappeared. They just stayed quiet, waiting. And that silence is exactly what makes everything that followed feel heavier. Because when Toni and Birdman got engaged, fans truly believed this was a chapter of emotional healing for her. She had been through so much already: health scares, financial stress, family responsibility, and public scrutiny. Seeing her smile again gave people hope. It felt like she finally found someone who understood her pain. But what nobody expected was that old rumors would resurface at the worst possible time. According to reports and online speculation, the situation escalated when discussions about Birdman's past connections resurfaced publicly, with some sources claiming he didn't completely deny a previous emotional bond with Kimora. And that's where everything started to feel uncomfortable. Because think about it, if you are in a committed relationship and suddenly the world begins discussing a decade-long alleged history your partner had with someone else, that alone is stressful. But if confirmation, even partial, enters the conversation, it hits differently. It stops being gossip and starts feeling personal. And insiders began hinting that Toni was deeply emotional during this period. Not loud, not dramatic, not confrontational, just quiet. Hurt, reflective, which honestly made the situation even more heartbreaking. Sources claimed that she didn't react with anger publicly. Instead, she allegedly withdrew emotionally, choosing silence over confrontation. And if you know Toni's personality, that behavior actually makes sense. She has always been someone who processes pain privately rather than putting it on display. But here's the twist that really caught fans off guard. Instead of addressing everything directly in public statements, Birdman reportedly remained calm and vague when the rumors gained traction. He neither fully shut them down nor aggressively denied historical connections. And in celebrity relationships, that kind of silence can speak louder than any statement. Because silence leaves room for interpretation, silence leaves room for doubt, and doubt is dangerous in any relationship. Now, imagine being Toni in that moment, a woman who has spent years trusting, believing, and investing emotionally into a love story that fans celebrated. Suddenly, her name is trending alongside rumors of a past woman who allegedly never truly disappeared from the narrative. That alone would shake anyone. What made things even more emotional was how fans began analyzing Toni's public appearances. People noticed subtle changes, softer energy, fewer affectionate mentions, a more reserved demeanor. And then came the reports that she was seen visibly emotional behind the scenes after hearing confirmation discussions about Birdman's past connection circulating again. And honestly, if that's true, it's completely understandable. Because betrayal doesn't always come from a new action. Sometimes it comes from discovering that the past was never fully closed. But here's where the story gets even more layered. Some insiders suggested that Toni's emotional reaction wasn't just about jealousy, it was about disappointment, about feeling like she had built her life around emotional security, only to realize that unresolved history might still exist in the background. That kind of realization doesn't create explosive reactions. It creates quiet tears, heavy silence, deep reflection. And that's reportedly what happened. Those close to the situation claimed that Toni allegedly broke down privately, not in front of cameras, not in interviews, but in safe spaces, where she could finally release the emotional weight she had been carrying. Because imagine loving someone deeply, only to question whether their emotional ties to the past were ever fully severed. It doesn't just hurt your heart, it shakes your trust. And trust, especially later in life, is something people protect fiercely. What nobody expected was how divided public opinion became. Some fans defended Birdman, arguing that past relationships shouldn't define present love. Others sympathized with Toni, saying that emotional transparency matters more than history itself. But here's the part that truly made the situation complicated. Despite the emotional storm, Toni didn't publicly lash out. She didn't go online to rant. She didn't give messy interviews. She remained composed, which honestly made her pain feel even more real. Because when someone who is normally expressive becomes quiet, it often means they are hurting more than they show. And people started asking one major question. Was this about betrayal or emotional exhaustion? Because let's be real for a moment. Toni has spent most of her life being strong, supporting family, fighting illness, rebuilding finances, maintaining a legendary career, carrying responsibilities that never truly slowed down. So when she finally chose love, fans believed she deserved peace, not emotional uncertainty. That's why reports of her crying hit the public so hard. Not because tears are dramatic, but because they were rare. And when a strong woman finally shows vulnerability, it tells a deeper story than any headline ever could. Emotionally, this situation reportedly affected more than just her personal feelings. It created tension around trust, image, and stability. Her brand has always been elegance, resilience, and quiet strength. Being linked to emotional turmoil threatens that carefully protected image, even if she handles it gracefully. Career-wise, she remained professional. Interviews stayed controlled, appearances stayed polished, but fans who have followed her for years noticed the emotional shift, that subtle heaviness behind the smile, that calm tone that felt more reflective than joyful. And then there's the relationship itself. Long-term love doesn't collapse overnight. It bends, it stretches, it survives storms that outsiders don't fully understand. Some reports even suggested that Toni wasn't just crying over rumors, but over the emotional weight of deciding whether love was still worth fighting for. Because leaving is not always easy, especially when history, comfort, and emotional attachment are deeply intertwined. Family and close friends allegedly encouraged her to prioritize her emotional health, not her public image, not her reputation, but her peace. And that alone says a lot about how serious the situation may have felt behind closed doors. Still, through all the whispers, one thing remained clear. She never publicly disrespected him. She never fueled the drama. She chose dignity. And that choice alone gained her even more respect from fans worldwide. As time passed, the narrative slowly shifted from scandal to emotional resilience. Instead of focusing only on rumors, people began talking about Toni's strength, her ability to remain composed even while dealing with personal heartbreak, her refusal to turn pain into spectacle. Because in an era where celebrity drama usually becomes loud and chaotic, her quiet emotional response stood out. And honestly, that silence may have been her loudest statement. In the end, this story isn't just about rumors, confirmations, or past relationships. It's about emotional reality, about how even strong, successful, legendary women can feel deeply hurt when trust feels uncertain. It's about how love later in life comes with higher emotional stakes, not lower ones. Sometimes people stay because of love, sometimes they stay because of history, and sometimes they stay because walking away feels heavier than enduring the storm. But one thing is certain: if Toni truly cried after hearing confirmation about lingering emotional ties from the past, those tears weren't weakness. They were the release of years of emotional investment, trust, and hope colliding with unexpected doubt. And that is what makes this story so powerful. Because behind the fame, the music, and the headlines, there is still a woman who wanted peace, a woman who wanted stability, a woman who believed in love deeply enough to risk heartbreak again. Whether the rumors are exaggerated, misunderstood, or partially true, one emotional truth remains undeniable: love becomes more fragile when the past refuses to stay in the past. And as fans continue watching this situation unfold, many are no longer asking who is right or wrong. They're asking something much deeper. Did she sacrifice her peace for love? Or is she still holding on to a love she believes is worth the emotional fight? Only time will truly reveal that answer. But one thing is clear: behind the calm public image, this chapter has been one of the most emotional, complex, and quietly heartbreaking moments in Toni's personal journey. And sometimes the quiet tears tell a story that words never fully can.